December 29th, 2023, an NBA player known as Kyle Kuzma tweeted this. At this point, it's like, don't be that team. This was in reference to the Detroit Pistons trying to avoid the NBA's record losing streak, which they were unable to do, finishing with 28 consecutive losses last season. Now, why am I mentioning this? Because since that tweet, the Washington Wizards have had a record of 16-83, and the man who tweeted that is currently a major contributor on possibly the worst team in NBA history.
He's going to take a half-court heave.
Max feeling like Clay.
Over the course of NBA history, there have been 3 teams with a net rating of -14 or higher. The 1992 Dallas Mavericks, the 2012 Charlotte Bobcats, who are probably the most infamous, and the 2025 Washington Wizards. And despite them not having the worst net rating ever yet, they could genuinely go down as the worst team ever, because they have somehow gone from bad to awful to quite literally an abomination over the span of this season, and things are only getting worse. When you are getting blown out by the Toronto Raptors in the first half of games, failing to score 40 points in the first half of a game against a 14-32 team, that's how bad the 2025 Washington Wizards are. When 34-year-old Klay Thompson is going off for 7 threes in the first quarter of a game, and you are losing by 30 points in the first half to a Mavericks team without Luka Doncic, that is how bad the 2025 Washington Wizards are. Just watch this play. We're off the missed shot, the Mavs get the ball in transition, and just for context, at this point the score is clearly 17-5, and Klay Thompson has already made 3 3-pointers. So if you're Washington, what do you think you should try to avoid in this situation? Maybe something like here, where Klay Thompson just casually strolls up the floor without a single Wizards player picking him up or even getting near him as he gets the pass from Dinwiddie and knocks down the 3. So at this point, with Klay on a real heater, do you think Sarr would recognize Klay is wide open in the corner on this play? Probably not. And I'm not going to sit here and call out Alex Sarr for falling asleep, because this is not the young player's fault. From top to bottom, not sure there is much top-end production right now, but from top to bottom, everyone has been awful this season, and we saw it again in their most recent loss against the Lakers, giving up 78 points in that first half. Which means in the last 3 first halves they've played, against a Mavs team without Luka Doncic, a Raptors team who aren't very good, and a Lakers team without Anthony Davis, they have been outscored by a combined 82 points in those last 3 halves of basketball. The wording sounds confusing, but you guys see what I mean. That is over a point per minute they're getting outscored at. And this is the worst part. Normally with young and bad teams, you at least get effort in the first half, the first 3 quarters of games, and as the game goes on, maybe they tire or the better teams are just better and execute down the stretch. But this clearly shows that the Wizards aren't just bad, they are completely disinterested. There is something rotten going on in Washington right now, and I showed you some of the defense from the game against the Mavericks. Well, it was awful again against the Lakers, but how about shooting 29% from the field in the first half? This is a Lakers team that is bottom 10 in defense and were without their best defensive player, and they shot 29%. But that's okay, because Kyle Kuzma has everything under control.
He's going to take a half-court heave. Front rim that one.
Okay, I know that was a heave, but still, it's quite funny. And they are so bad that they are currently the worst offense and worst defense in the NBA. And the Wizards should consider themselves extremely grateful for 2 franchises in particular, the Atlanta Hawks and the Charlotte Hornets, who they have managed to beat twice, alongside somehow beating the Denver Nuggets with Nikola Jokic going off for 50 points in that game. But if you removed those games against Atlanta and Charlotte, they would be 2-40 against the rest of the NBA. 2 wins and 40 losses against teams not named Atlanta or Charlotte, with 1 win against a team 500 or above. Denver, you should be absolutely ashamed. And just some of the plays you see from this team on a nightly basis is absurd. Who better to highlight than the man who we mentioned at the start of the video, Mr. Twitterfingers himself, Kyle Kuzma. Because Kyle Kuzma is a major reason this team sucks. With a team full of young players and a few washed older players, Kuzma is supposed to be the one player on this team alongside Jordan Poole with the right combination of experience and ability to at least help steady the ship on most nights. Poole has been pretty good for the most part. Kuzma, he's been pretty awful pretty much the entire season, averaging 14 and 6 a game on 42% from the field, 27% from 3, and obviously he's not playing any defense either. And do you want to hear the craziest part? The Washington Wizards have a net rating of -21.5 with Kuzma on the floor. I didn't even know it was possible to get that low, because it hasn't been, because that is over 6 points lower than the Charlotte Bobcats. And I mean, take your pick at what he's been doing wrong this season. Look at him here against Daniel Gafford, calling his own number, of course. He tries to hit Gafford with some kind of variation of the dream shake, and he just gets packed. Or how about here, where he's bringing the ball up against Scotty Barnes, and he just fumbles it under a bit of pressure? You could make an entire video on how bad Kyle Kuzma has been this season, but that would also mean making an entire video on Kyle Kuzma, which won't be happening, so instead, that is enough. Now, I know this has been quite a negative video, but if there is one positive for Washington, let me think. If there is one positive... Okay, jokes aside, they have a few guys on this team who I do like. Everyone knows about Palau Coulibaly. He looked like an absolute superstar to start the season and has since regressed pretty aggressively, but it's hard to blame him because I don't know if Luka Doncic himself could look good on this team right now. But worst case, you have a guy with elite defensive upside who has the offensive tools to be very legit on that end as well. You have Alex Sarr, who is like Palau in the sense where the defense is clear and the offensive potential is there, but there's still a lot of room to improve. And then you have Bob Carrington, Keyshawn George, and Jordan Poole, who are at different stages in their career, but are all players who I like for one reason or another. I know that's a brief list of positives, but I don't think that this team is doomed. All it takes is Cooper Flagg, or maybe Dylan Harper, Ace Bailey, and there are the building blocks of a solid young core. But I think the biggest need for the Wizards right now is to change every player on this team that is over 24 years old, because it is an indictment on the veterans that this team has reached this level. And I'm not someone who thinks a team needs to be competing for the play-in whilst they are clearly rebuilding. OKC, Orlando, Detroit, Houston, all of these young teams that are doing quite well now were terrible. But there is a level of terrible that is acceptable and fair for the fans to accept, and then there is the Wizards that have gone beyond any level that should ever be acceptable to watch, and they are doing so whilst playing numerous veterans every single night. That's the worst part of this all. I just pray for their sake that Cooper Flagg can bring hope to this situation, because things aren't looking too good right now. Now, if you made it all the way to the end of the video, consider subscribing, dropping a like on the video would be cool. Most importantly, have a great day. Bye.